All right, let's start having a little bit of fun and start rendering this image out and applying materials and all that kind of stuff. So we've already kind of gone a little bit over how to change your environment. So basically what I did was in the library gone to the environment tab over here, and you can cycle through these different options. They have them organized as interior, outdoor, sun and sky, ZBrush, studio. ZBrush, this is something that I installed with the ZBrush 2 Keyshot plugin. So ZBrush is going to have their own HDRI images, as well as if you go over to materials, scroll all the way down, there's going to be some ZBrush materials in here as well. Frog gradient was mine. I think that was something I made a long time ago, so I'm going to go ahead and delete that. But speaking of, you can create your own materials, or you can modify materials from the basics. So if you go here to materials here, you're going to see all these different materials. You can start with them, modify them, and then save them out as your own custom materials and organize them through this section here. Now if you go up here to the materials tab, you're going to see, if we scroll down, you're seeing all these different materials. Of course, if we go down here and choose something like paint, these are going to be all the different paint materials here. And if you open up this little plus sign here, you're going to have metallic paint, rough, shiny, textured. And if you open up metallic, you're going to have candy coat, classic, standard, and traditional. And so they keep going through here, and you can kind of narrow down your selections with that method. Or you can also go up here and say, type in candy, and here is all of your candy metallics that you can choose from. If you go over here to colors, this is where you can pull in different colors from Pantone. For example, they even got a little bit of camouflage colors in here. And just like with materials, you can save your own custom colors in here if you're using a lot of colors, just like swatches in Photoshop. If you go over here to textures, we're not going to get real heavy into this just right now, but these are where you can find different bump maps, different color maps, even IES profiles for your lighting, labels, samples, opacity maps, wood, etc. Going over to environment, we've already done a little bit of this. We went to outdoor and we just double clicked this village lawn here. Now this versus, if you go and look at the installation video, it'll tell you how to get these little extra things that you can install with Keyshot if you'd like. But let's go here to interior. And we'll just double click this, and we're going to put this right into a little apartment building right here. Now if you want to kind of set it in the scene here, you can. And you can leave the environment back here, but if you just want to use this environment to light your object, but you don't necessarily want to see it, what you can do is go over here to the environment tab on the project side and go to color here. That'll just fill this background in with a solid color. You can also use a backplate image, and you can either browse to that image, or you can go over here to your backplates and choose any of these backplate images. So something I'll do often, well not often, but sometimes what I'll do if you go and look at my ZBrush videos is I'll take one of these. Let's take the ZBrush Shop 08. And if you double click it, it's going to give you your backplate here, and it's also going to resize that. So if I go over here to the image here, you're going to see you have it unlocked. So I'll go ahead and settle that back down in there. But now we have a backplate in there. So it looks like our object is put right onto this backplate here. Now in order to light this, what I'm going to do is going to go to Studio. Oh, I'm sorry, let's go back to Environments. I'm going to go Studio, scroll all the way down. I'm going to just double click this Startup, because that's got lighting that's actually a little bit similar to what this backplate has. And now it looks like my object is sitting right on here. Now you're going to see that in this object we have, it's very sharp here. The camera was kind of focused in here, and then it gets blurrier as we go back. We can actually match that within Keyshot. So if we go over here to the camera settings here, let's go ahead and open up lens settings. And if you're matching a specific setting in here, if you had the data on what lens they were using, what focal length they were using for this, you can change that here. You can change it from like 35mm to say 55mm if you wanted to, and match that up. And incidentally, you can also change it over here to orthographic if you want to do a straight side, front, bottom, top, etc. You can change it, but I'll go ahead and leave perspective on there. If we go down here to depth of field, that's where we're going to be able to control going from sharp to blurry depending on how far away the object is from the focal point. In order to select that, you're going to need to turn on depth of field, go to select focal point, and we'll go ahead and just choose this T right here. That's going to be where our focal point is. And you're going to see right down here it says click on a surface second focal point. When you've done that, click done, and there you go, and you've got that all set. Now if you change your f-stop here, if we change this down, you're going to see the further away from that point it gets, as this object recedes backwards into space away from the camera focal point, it's going to get blurrier, and as it comes more towards where the focal point is, it's going to get sharper. So you're going to see even when you're taking a picture, it didn't get that blurry. So I'm going to change that f-stop up just a little bit. It just gets a little bit blurry as it kind of hits here, and we're going to kind of get this a little bit blurry as it goes out here, and it's getting sharp here. And then if this was thicker, like say we did our extrusion thicker within ZBrush, if we keep going back, it would just continue to get blurrier the further away from that point it got. So we kind of settle in our object into the scene by doing that. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention in the setup Keyshot basic stuff is if you right click in any of these, just like we went over here to window and we turned off the toolbar on the ribbon, you can also go to the ribbon itself and say, you know what, I never used this tumble pan and dolly, so I'm going to go ahead and turn off tumble pan and dolly. I don't need to see that. And also, I'm such a pro, I don't need to know what this text is. That's not true, but in case you are a professional, you didn't need to see this text. You can also turn the text off for that. I'm going to go ahead and leave that on, both for myself and while I'm doing demonstrations, so you can kind of see a little bit easier. You can also do that through here. So in the Environments tab, if you never use the favorites, just go ahead and turn favorites off. Or if you do, just leave it back on. Then you can also go through here and you can turn off the text, or you can also turn off the icon, and that way it's just text. So you can kind of keep your workspace cleaned up like that. So we've got this all set up. We've got a nice lighting environment. We've got a nice backplate here. The materials don't quite sit in the scene. So you're going to see we have some clay back here. So let's make it look like it was sculpted from clay. So I'm going to go to my materials here, all the way down to ZBrush, and they have these Aromaplastiline, Chevron NSP, ZBrush Clay Green, so you can actually pull from these here and kind of make these match. So what I'm going to do is just drag this here, and as I drag from the material to an object, it's going to replace that material that's on the object with this new material. So I'll click and drag that over. And if you want to see how this is affecting our scene, so here's our scene here, and here's our different objects here. You can, when you're in the scene tab over here, you can just click on the objects. It'll go ahead and highlight them. And you're going to see while we're in the scene mode, you can actually go down here to materials, and these are the materials that are applied to our scene. Now, if I continue to drag from this area over, so I see how I drag the ZBrush Clay Chavant onto this object here. If I drag it from this ZBrush Clay Chavant onto this Ryzen right here, what that's going to do is tell me a material with that name is already in use. Do you want to link these materials? So at this point, you can tell it if you don't want to link these materials and you click no, what that's going to do is give this one a separate material. So this one has ZBrush Chavant Clay number 1. This one has ZBrush Chavant Clay number 2. If I go ahead and select that and I double click it, it'll go automatically to the material, and you're going to see this is ZBrush Clay Chavant. The cool thing about that is that I can modify this separately. So if I want to go over here, but just so we can see some difference between this, let's go over here to the Textures tab. And you see we don't have a bump loaded. So I'm going to click on this bump here. I'm going to right click it, go to Textures, and we're just going to put a noise texture into that bump. If I crank the scale down, now if I type 1 in here on the bump scale, and I'm really going to want to crank up that bump height too. So I'm going to go from 0.42 to like 0.55, and you're going to see now this material back here is getting pretty bumpy. So as I continue to scale this down, you're going to see that bumpy texture is going to get smaller. So now you're able to see how this Chavant material is separate from this one. If you didn't want that to happen, if you wanted these to be linked, what I would do is first drag over your first material as clay, which is what we did. And now you know what we'll call this? Ryzen Clay. So you can see right here we have Ryzen Clay. That's a clay that's assigned to this one. If you also want to assign this clay to this object back here, drag from this side. If you drag from this side, you can link it if you want to, if you have the same name, but because we've changed the name, we can just drag this Ryzen Clay here and assign it to this one. And now these two are linked. So as we're making changes to this one material, it will change them both. Now if you ever want to unlink these materials, all you got to do is go into your scene mode here, right click the object, choose unlink material, and now you're going to have its own version of the Ryzen Clay that we have. Now this is kind of looking samey. We got the green block back here, and we've got this green right here that's kind of matching. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take this gray clay right here, because you can see there's a little bit of gray in this backplate. So I'm going to take the ZBrush gray clay and assign that to our ring right here, and then I'm going to go to our materials here. I'm going to take this Ryzen Clay and apply that to our Threadripper. So our Ryzen and our Threadripper will be the same material, and now it kind of separates out the background from this side. Now you're going to see in my background image, the shadows mostly seem to fall. The light's coming from this direction or thereabouts. You can see back here the shadow from the clay block is kind of going this way. And our shadow in our lighting image is actually going the wrong way. So we go over here to the environment. Under the transform environment, you can take this rotation and you can just drag that around. You can also hold down Control and left mouse click, and you can just drag your environment around. What it's basically doing is rotating that environment, and the environment, which is lighting your object, is rotating around, so you can see that lighting change. It's not super obvious because this is so diffuse in here, but that's kind of how our backplate is set up. So as we go through different things and different scenarios here, you'll see that a little bit more clearly, but you can kind of see as we Control left mouse click or grab this and rotate it around, it's kind of changing the lighting. Now, of course, if you really wanted this to feel integrated and real, what you would want to do is, maybe build a stand and give these things some support so it looked like this was an actual object, because right now these things are hovering in space, so it kind of breaks the illusion a little bit. But just for demonstration purposes, I think you kind of get the idea. And since we've kind of already broken the illusion, let's have a little bit more fun. So under materials here, if you click on light, you're going to see we have area light, emissive light, IES, and point light. We're going to stick with emissive here. We're going to emissive cool. We're going to drag that onto our Ryzen logo. What that's going to do is apply an emissive texture to this logo, and that's going to make it act as its own light source here. So if I double click this now, it's going to go to the emissive material that's assigned. And you can crank up that intensity, and you're going to see as it's getting close to these letters here, it's actually casting light on those objects. If you want to make that really obvious, we can go here to area light and apply that. I'm going to change this from lumens to watts. There we go. So now that ring is actually lighting up our letters there. If you want to, you can crank that power down just a bit so it's not quite so intense. So this is like having a 96 watt ring right next to those objects right there. Now let's say you think it's too close. Well, you can go in here and you can manipulate these objects in KeyShot 7 Pro. And what I can do is I can go to the scene here and you can either select it through here, the object, or you can just tap onto the object here and it'll go ahead and outline it for you. I like to go in here to right click move part. You can also probably just click this move tool up here, or right click here and say move part, or click the move tool, and that'll go ahead and bring in this move tool here. Now let's say I like this camera setup. I don't want to lose where that camera is. So really quickly I'm going to go over here to camera, and right now I only have a free camera. I'm going to add a camera here. We'll call this product, and we'll go ahead and lock that camera. I'm going to go back to my free camera, and now I can rotate around this free camera here, and I can go ahead and pull this back. So as I'm pulling back this ring here, you're going to see it's lighting less and less of the object. It's lighting more and more of the object, like so. You can actually also scale this in and out if you wanted to, but you're going to need to turn on the scale here. So by default it looks like the scale is off. Go ahead and turn on scale, and now you can scale it either non-uniformly this way, or you can scale it uniformly this way if you want to make it a little bit bigger or smaller. Once you're happy with this, go ahead and click the checkbox, and then we can rotate back around. Of course, we already have our product camera here, so just click that and it'll snap your camera back to that product render. And of course, feel free to go back to material. If you want to modify this material here, all you got to do is double click on the object to go to the Ryzen clay that's assigned to that material, or the area light here. And we'll change this to like a 17 watt bulb. Now if you wanted to make this, we started with a cool light, but if you want to, just go over here to the color and change that, since the Ryzen colors are usually pretty warm. And you can go ahead and change that. You don't have to go super bright, but you can go down here to like a less saturated, warmer color if you were so inclined. Now let's say we wanted to make a little bit more of a polished product-y image here. What we can do is we can go ahead and try out that backplate, because this doesn't look like a real product environment. This looks like a kind of a working environment here. So what I'm going to do is go back to my environment here. And instead of the backplate image, we're just going to choose color. And instead of a super bright white, let's go ahead and just choose like a darker gray here. Click OK. And let's talk a little bit more about materials. So instead of using these ZBrush materials, which you may or may not have if you don't have the ZBrush bridge, what I'm going to do is go over here and let's go to plastic. So I'm going to do plastic. They have a new one, and this is KeyShot 7 1.1 Pro, and they have a new cloudy plastic, which is really cool. We'll get to that in a bit. But I'm going to start here with hard, shiny plastic. And let's take this black plastic here, and we're going to replace this one. Now you can see when I drag this over, it's replacing both the Ryzen and the Threadripper. Even though they're two separate objects, if we go back up here to scene, they're two separate objects. They are material linked. So if I double click this one, you're going to see Ryzen clay is assigned to both of these. If you want to have them separate, all you got to do is drag this over, assign it to both, and then you can right click and unlink, or if I Control Z to undo that, another thing you do is go over to scene, and let's say I just want to put this on the Threadripper. Instead of applying it to the object itself down here, go over here to the specific object here, and now it'll just apply that to the Threadripper text. Now that I've applied black, hard, shiny plastic to that, I'm going to go back to my environment here, color, and I'm going to lighten this up a little bit so that text pops a little bit more. I don't want to lose the light ring, but I also don't want to lose the Threadripper, so we'll hit OK. And of course, if I want Ryzen and Threadripper to be on the same material now, all I got to do is drag from this side here, and that'll go ahead and automatically link those two up. So now we have one hard shiny plastic applied to both of these. So if we go in here and change these properties, for example, if I change the roughness now, you're going to see a much more dramatic result from the clay one. So now it's getting a lot rougher, the reflections aren't as shiny, and then if I change this roughness all the way down to super shiny, you're going to see it's very shiny, very reflective. Of course, you can also go in here to the diffuse. We have black selected, but you can change this to whatever color you want. Feel free to do that, but we'll go ahead and stick with black. Now, while we're working on this without a backplate, let's go ahead and explore a few more of those environments here. So if we go over here to the environment tab, and again, this is in my library. If we want to play with the environment as it is, you can go over here to the environment tab and make adjustments to that. So if you want to increase the brightness of the environment, you can increase that, and that'll be the lighting environment that's lighting the object more. However, if we take this all the way down to 0, that's essentially going to get rid of your entire environment. Now you might, if you change your environment to black, you might be asking, well, how is it still lighting something? That's because this area light here is providing the lighting for the scene. Now you can use two, you can use both, and you can also create your own lit objects outside of this, which, we'll go ahead and do that. So let's change this logo right here. This doesn't really need to be lit. The logo itself kind of goes from an orange to a red gradient, so let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go back to my environment. I'm going to take this brightness and let's put this back up at 1. But let's go ahead and change that environment out. Well, I don't want to use the default anymore. So you can go over here to Studio and you're going to see we have 3-point lighting, basic, light tense panel, zebra stripes, all these cool things you can do for like product renders. So if you go over here and double click, that'll go ahead and swap out your lighting environment. And if you want to see that lighting environment, just simply go over here to your environment and change it back to the lighting environment. And now if we double click this, there's the startup. Let's just go to Studio here. You scroll all the way down through here, Studio backdrop here, and if I go back to my camera and we go to free camera, we can rotate around. You're going to see that's the lighting environment that we're in. So if we go to the zebra stripes at the top and we look up, it's got all those lights around here, and it's giving us this effect. You can also go to interior or outdoors. If we double click this interior lighting, again we're seeing the background environment. I forgot we also have under the camera the depth of field turn on. It's going to turn that off. So here's our lighting environment, and we can go back to our environment here, turn back on color, and we're using that environment to both light and create reflections for our objects, but we didn't really want to see it. We want to have that as a color. An alternative to that, you can go up here to, I don't know if this is in HD, I think it might just be a pro thing, but you can go over here to Edit, Add Geometry. You can actually add a ground plane, which we'll get to in a bit, or a backdrop ramp, or a backdrop round. So if you click on a backdrop ramp, and you kind of zoom out, you're going to see there is a ramp through here that's kind of going up and over. And if we go to our scene here, you're going to see it dropped in a backdrop ramp. So if we wanted to, like, say, rotate this thing around, you can right click this and do move, or you can also do your object here if you want to. So our ZBrush right here has our 3 objects nested underneath it. So if you right click this one and choose move, you'll move all 3 at the same time. If you want to, you can actually scale this up and rotate it around. Then once you started rotating, you can go through here and you just type in 90 if you want. Or in this case, we probably want to do 180. There you go. So now we can see the object here. We've got the ramp right behind it, so I'm going to go ahead and click that checkbox here. And now we've got a nice ramp gradient behind that. If that's something you don't want, all you got to do is right click on this, hit delete, and you can delete that ramp out of your scene. If you go to environment, you see we still have the light gray color here. Now it also looks like I need to click the ZBrush here. I'm going to do move. I'm going to say snap to ground, and that's going to go ahead and snap this entire bounding box to the ground plane here. There we go. So basically go through here, double click any of these outdoor, indoor environments that might be useful to you. And if you want more of these, you can go to the cloud library.